no matter which of those you use, if you hit Q on your keyboard after you've joined up, what you get into is the quick mask mode. Quick mask shows you quite quickly with this sort of salmon pink color what is selected and what isn't. So right now the part that is not salmon pink is my selection area. And I can use now a paintbrush, and with the paintbrush I can paint in areas with the salmon pink that I don't want, right? Or I can use the eraser and I can change the shape of the eraser or a paintbrush for that matter by clicking on any one of these icons. So I would just bring it over and go, yeah, it's a bit big. That's not too bad. I think I can use that. And now by going into the finger, I can erase back this salmon pink. It's still showing a little bit. Take a look at the top. Remember I told you there are things up here that will affect a particular tool, and I noticed at some point in my photoshopping I had brought the opacity down, so I'm going to bring that back to 100%. And when I do that now, I can see, there we go, it's now erasing out all of the salmon paint. So by toggling back and forth between adding some paint and taking away some paint, and let me just, again, just to show you, you can see here, adding some paint. And then when I hit Q, I can see it's actually shifted over the marquee, right? If I want to take that away, back to Q, take my eraser, erase off that, hit Q, and there you go, it's shifted over. So you've got a lot of control as to what you use for your marquee. Plus, on top of all of that, you still have access to the rectangle and the oval. So if I decided for some strange reason I wanted to grab this area, it adds to it, okay, as long as you got that add selection, or it takes away. Third selection tool that I'd like to show you, I'm going to go back to this tiger picture here. When you have a background that's either exactly the same color or a little bit of a change, so it would actually work on this one as well. All right, I'll come back to this one. It's a little more complex, but let's go to the tiger eye again. You have quick selection tool, magic wand tool. And for this one, I would go with the magic wand tool, especially good for all the same color. And then add to selection, and I would simply click on the white area. And I just grab all of that area. Now, it's not the part that I want. If I copy, Control-C, paste, Control-V, you can see that what I've actually grabbed was the white. I mean, that's what I clicked on. So let's get rid of this layer, and let's try this instead. I'm going to go back to history, just go to my magic wand selection. Again, very useful. I really want to select, actually, the butterfly wing. So if I go to Select, Inverse, I've now selected the wing. When I copy it and paste it, you can see in my layers, I now have selected the wing, okay? That was easy to do. What if you've got a little more complicated background? Is there a way to do this? Sure there is. Let me just move for a second. My layers is a little bit in the way. It's on my picture. There's a little button right there you can click on, and it collapses the icon. Right? So I have the ability of getting that out of my face. If I want it back again, click back there again. Now I can see my palette again. All right, so let's just move that aside for now. So how do I go about selecting the background? Well, again, I could use my magic wand tool. And let me show you what this 32 tolerance now does. Add to selection. I'm going to click. So what it did is it grabbed a lot of the green, right? You can see, but not quite all. With plus, I can simply keep clicking until it grabs basically everything. If I find that it's grabbing too much on a color, that's when you would play with this tolerance. Let me deselect that for a second. Let's increase this to a 50. Click on the green. Notice how it's grabbed almost everything, just a little bit of it left, so I can click on that. So it actually grabbed with only a couple of clicks, pretty well everything, except for maybe that one spot. I would probably grab my rectangle marquee, make sure add to selection is there, and there. I've now got all of the green selected. On the other hand, if I go back to that magic wand, and if I'd only had a tolerance of 15 and clicked, you can see how much it grabbed, far less. I would have to click repeatedly to grab as much of the green as I had before, and even still, I'm struggling because so much of this green is not being picked up. So basically, the tolerance, the larger the number is on that, let's try 25, the more it will pick a similar color to what's in the magic wand tip. So if you look in the star, whatever I click on, it selects that and what is similar to it. The bigger the number, the more it will grab. How about the other tool? Let's have a look. I'm just going to deselect, Control-D, and let's take a look at the quick selection tool. A little different object here, all right? Now it defaults to this first setting. Let's use it the way it is. I can change the brush size still here, but diameter, right? What you want to do is you want to click on the color you want to get rid of and drag in it. Okay, and I'm just going to be careful here, getting near the head. I'm going to add to that selection. It automatically defaulted to add. going to go into the area I've already selected, click down and drag again, and keep going. Now what will probably happen, in fact I can see my watch has disappeared a little bit here. I'm going to keep clicking and adding, and I'm hoping that there we go. It's actually grabbed so much of the green now, I've lost my arm. How do I get that back? Do I have to deselect and start again? No, switch over to takeaway. And now for takeaway, I want to go into the area that I haven't selected yet and push back. There you can see the arm has just come back, keep going through it. And I've pretty well got everything there. I can see maybe the fingertip isn't quite selected. Switch over to my magnifying glass. I'm going to drag over the area. There we go. So I can see a little more of my fingertip perhaps in the watch that I want. So once again, go back to the quick selection tool, take away. But now this is getting a little large. So I would go into here and change the size, click into my image and drag back, bring back my watch. All right, so here I am. I've selected a lot of the green. There's a few spots here that I haven't quite picked up on. A real easy way to do that, again, is I'm going to take the rectangle marquee and still add to selection so I can quickly grab large chunks of the areas that have not been picked up. Now you notice I haven't bothered trying to click on the brown yet. I'm concerned the brown is too similar to the running shoe. So rather than doing that, I'll stop here, I'll select inverse, and then I'm going to go with my refine edge, do any of the sort of slight adjustments that I might want to do when I'm satisfied. That looks pretty good. Maybe I'll bring down my feathering just a little bit. I think it's a little bit high there. Great, copy, paste it. Let's open up our layers again, have a look at the damage. We'll hide that layer. You know, that's not too bad. Now let's deal with the foot. And again, we can use a number of the tricks that we've learned so far. So I might decide, you know what, it's probably not going to work well with either of these. Let's go back to polygon lasso. And with feathering, if I add maybe about a 2 there, I can now go through and just carefully click away. And I can either select around the entire foot, or I can do chunks if I feel a little more confident with just a piece. Double click, it's selected. And how about just delete on the keyboard? There we go. That's a way that you can erase something quickly that you selected. Just hit delete on the keyboard. So I've just jumped ahead, managed to select the other part. I'm going to go Control 0. There we go. There's the culprit now. Now I'd like to take all of this object and place it into, let's say, this picture here. We'll get rid of all of these extra little hands here. So I'm just going to hold Shift, go between them, hit delete. So I want my picture to be inside of this one here. How do I go about doing that? Well, let's go back to this picture I've cut out. So I want to select all of him. A couple ways I could do it. If I hold Control and hit A, I've just selected all. I could copy paste them. Another way I could do that, go over top of the little picture, hold down Control and click on the figure, and it selects everything that's on that layer. Now that it's selected, copy, Control C. Let's go over to our background picture, paste it, Control V, and there we go. We have the beginning of our butterfly jumping around here. Okay, let's go to the tiger eye butterfly. We've already cut that out. Now we don't really need this part in here, so I'm going to take just my regular marquee. I'm going to bring the feathering down to about 2, and I'm going to carefully drag over top of it. I notice I've missed that little bit. I'd really like to have that as well. Again, I can add to that by using other tools. So I'm going to add to my selection. Make sure I've selected Add To. Click inside of here. Grab that little bit of wing. Double click to join it together. And you can see it's moved over my marquee. Copy, Control C. Let's move over to our character. Paste it with Control V. Okay, well, the wing's going to be a bit of a problem unless I want to attach them to my head. I mean, that could be kind of cute, but I want to have them behind his shoulders. That's a layer thing. So we'll take our layer, drag it below. There we go. We're in the right place. Now, I'd like to have the wing on the other side. We need a duplicate. I'm going to hold Alt down, drag. So these are the things we did earlier on. It's going in the wrong direction. I'm going to make sure I'm on the correct layer. And we're going to go to Edit in our menu bar. And you can see that there is Transform. Now, we've already done the Control T, which is free transform. You can see there it is right there. But I'm going to go to Transform. And here we have Flip Horizontal and Flip Vertical. So I want to horizontally flip it over. Terrific. We can now shift this into place. By the way, if you use the arrow key, you can shift one at a time until you get it point by point exactly where you would like it. Right? I'm going to select the other one. I've got auto select on, so I know it already grabbed that one. I can now change it. So I might decide, though, you know what? They're exactly the same. What if I'd like one wing a little different? And my arms are kind of on an angle. Let's go back to this one. Transform, Control T. And now, if I go outside the box, I get a rounded arrow. I could actually rotate this a little bit. change the position. That's not bad. So what I'd like to show you at the sort of basic level is, let's say that I'd like to change the color of the blue that's in here. How do I go about doing that in the wings? So let's just hide the figure, and we're going to hide our background. And we're going to try to play around with changing the blue. And we're going to use something called a gradient tool. Okay? And when I click on the gradient tool, I can see that we have a gradient that appears up top here. If I click inside of this, I have access to a number of gradients. And in fact, by default, you'll have a fair limited amount of these here. All right? If you want to add more, simply click on this little circle, and these are all additional ones you could add. So you might want to add the pastels. It's going to say replace current gradient, and you're going to say no, append. When you do append, it adds it to the bottom. So you can increase the amount that you have here. All of these are a little bit different, right? I might go to noise samples and append it as well. Right? There's some noise samples. So when you have a gradient, though, so I've got one that's selected here, you'll notice there are these paint buckets at the bottom. If I click on a paint bucket, color will appear. Now here's how you change your color. So I'm going to select color, and what we have here now is a typical color palette in Photoshop. Every time I click on something, it changes to the new color. Current shows you what it was, and that's my new color. At the far left, pure white, pure black with all the grays in between. As you move into this, you change to the different colors. And then our colors rainbow is along the side here, and I can either click on this to move it along or grab these sliders. So by doing that, I can change the color in this paint pot. Hit OK, and we have a new one inside of it. If I'd like to add more colors, click anywhere along here, a new paint pot appears. Go into the color, and why don't we pick red? All right, now you can see how it's added to it. In addition to that, I can actually change the way this mixes by dragging the paint pots or even dragging the little diamond in between, and it will adjust how we have the interplay and the intermixing of the colors. When I'm satisfied, hit OK. I have my new color there. Now how do I apply it? Well, let's start off by making just a new layer. New layers, by the way, in the layer palette is this button right over here. If I click on that, it makes a new empty layer for me. And what I can do now is drag across this surface and let go. And what it did is it filled this with the colors that you have over on the side here. I happen to have this second button right here selected. If I had been on the first button, I would have going across the side. The next one over gives you kind of a pyramid sort of a look, etc. You can play around with these on your own time. So what I'm going to do here is just get rid of the layer. I just wanted to show you how it would apply. Now let's do it to the blue of the wings. All right, I'm going to take my magnifying glass. Let's get in a little closer. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go up to select in the menu bar, color range. And I'm going to use sample colors. I could pick specifically, I could say blues, and you can see the blues are showing over here. I could try cyan, but instead, let's go with sample color and go straight over to the blue and pick it. And you can see now over in this field here that it has selected the blue color. If I want less of it selected, I simply drag the slider, right, and it will increase or decrease the amount. Now this shows me selection, this shows me image. I personally find working with selection works better because then I can actually see physically what's being added. Once I'm happy, I can hit OK. My selection is made. Not a bad idea to make a new layer. Always make a new layer, just because anytime you're going to add a color, this way you have the ability of going into your opacity or using the eraser to make some corrections. I can now go to my gradient tool, and why don't I try this circle to rag out, and you can see that it's colored it in. But we can also say, you know what, it's not working on this side. Why is it not working? Well, let's look at our layers for a moment here. We have a butterfly wing, this one in fact, above what's going on here. So let's deselect and see what happened. Control D. I'm going to move this below. And when I do that, you can see, yes, in fact, we did fill it with the color. Now here's why we did that, because now I have the ability of selecting the fill we just did, playing with the opacity, and having the two merge together until I get the colors the way that I want it. Now, these separate layers, how do I get these layers to go together? All right, well, what I would do is go hold Control and hit E. It'll take this layer and merge it down to the one below. Control E again, and there we go. We now have our layers merged into the one butterfly wing set. Bring back our picture. I'm going to go Control 0 to full size it, show our background, and there we go. We now have Stasiak with wings. Of course, I'm still separate, so why don't we, for now, maybe we want to keep it separate because we might want to add something else. So if I simply make one of these bins, I can take these two together. Let's put it inside the bin, collapse that up. Now when I select this and move it around, we have the Pixie Stasiak playing around. Last couple of things I'd like to show you to complete this beginner's lesson, and that is the text tool. We'll click on the text tool, and up the top again we have our selection of text, so we can scroll through. We can see an example on the side here of what it is that we're typing. The size, left justified, centered. There's the color of the text, so if I want to go straight to black, remember no color on this side here. Hit OK, and why don't we type in Stasiak. Now if I'm not happy with the size, don't panic. I'm going to hit the moving tool, go Control T, got my transform, and now I have the ability of resizing this to whatever size I want. All right, getting it to work to the size I would like it. If I decide that I would like to change the font, if I want to click back inside of my text, pay attention for a second here to this icon. You can see there's a dotted line around it. When I move into the text, that disappears. That means I'm now able to select. All right, so I can now select the text, and if I then decide I want to change color, what the text looks like, I have the ability to be able to do that. So how about I'm going to go with a mid-gray for a second. All right, I've got this African text here, and I'll make it just a little bit larger, so I'm just going to do my transform. Excellent, hit enter. Photoshop was made because of text, and it was made because of this one little button right there. So if I click on that, it takes me into all of these effects, classic used in text. How about drop shadow? I'm going to shift that over. You can see that there's a check mark in drop shadow. I'm on that layer, and I have a series of controls that I can use. If I want to change the angle of my shadow, there's how you do the angle. But first, let's make sure we can see it. So let's do a distance. There you go. Now you can definitely see the shadow, and we can play around with changing the direction that we would like it to be by clicking in here. I'll keep it there. We've got spread, which simply makes it a little bit larger. The size, a little softer on the edge when you do that. I can change the color, bring down its opacity, etc., with those. If I want to add a bevel to my text as well, I can simply do it by hitting the check mark, but I don't have any control over that. I'm still in the drop shadow feature. Click on the actual bevel emboss words, and now we can have outer bevels, embossing. We can control the size of it, whether we want it to go up, whether we want it to go down, etc., all right, so I'll hit OK. I now have my text all changed, and when I look, something new has been added. We have quite a different look to our layers. Here we can see the information when we use pictures. It shows a little bit of an image, and these are little tiny dots. That's what forms these images. If I can get close enough into our image, you can see that we have these little dots that show up, as opposed to our text. Our text is actually more of a mathematic formula, and that's why we can do a transform on this and change it, and it'll stay every bit as good detail as it was when it was small. If I zoom in really close on it, it stays really high quality, unlike the picture. So besides doing that, let's go back to our text tool for just a second. We're still on the text layer, and I didn't show you yet this button right there. All right, if I click on that, this is our warp text tool. And in here, I can pick different kinds of warps that I want to use. And I can control how large the bend is, or what direction and effect the bend is. Quite a few to choose from, so you can decide on which kind that you would like to play around with. All right, but it creates some pretty amazing effects with doing that. Hit OK, and we now have that effect applied to it as well. Now, if at any time you go through these and you go, you know what, I really don't like having that bevel and emboss, you can simply click on the eye there, and the bevel and emboss is removed. Now, and if I find that I really don't want to have the bevel and emboss or any effect, it's really easy just to completely get rid of it. Just click on it, drag, and go straight to the trash. You can see it's dragging some kind of an FX, drag the trash, let go, and it permanently disappears. And the last little touch for the beginners is dealing with color itself. Now, we already took a look at some, but down at the bottom here, what we have is foreground and background. Now, what does that mean? Well, first off, there is a default button that you can press that will give you pure black, pure white, right? And you can switch that, pure black and pure white, by hitting that. Now let's get into the black just for a second so I can show you drastically different colors. I'm going to go into the white, and let me try that with a blue for a moment. So if I took the eraser right now, and let's go to the background, and I decided to do some erasing. Let's make this a little bigger so you can really see this. Great, good size eraser. If I erase, the background that I've selected right now is blue. Watch what happens. We expose blue. All right, it's going to undo that. If I flip this, it would now go down to red. All right, so that's literally what the background means. The foreground color is the color if you were going to be painting or creating text. If I clicked on the text right now, look, there's the color there as well. So whatever I had in my foreground color is now my text color as well. And if I was trying to pick up a color from my picture that I wanted to use in my text, or for whatever else, you could use the eyedropper tool. Select the eyedropper tool. If I want to pick up some of these sort of sunset colors, pick that, and there it is now. It's in my foreground color. So there was a lot in this video. That brings you to what I call level 1 Photoshop.